He came home early one evening and found his wife at their dinner table with another man, a man wearing his shirt. What would you do if the person you trusted most, the architect of your happiness, dismantled your world in the one place you felt safe? This is the story of Mark, a husband who lost his marriage in the span of a single heartbeat and found his own worth in the quiet, desolate weeks that followed. For Mark, life had a comfortable, predictable rhythm. At 34, he was an architect, a man who built things that were meant to last. He found beauty in clean lines, solid foundations, and the logic of a well-executed blueprint. His own life, he believed, was his greatest design. A 5-year marriage to Sarah was the cornerstone of that design, a structure he thought was impervious to the elements. He was a simple man in his desires. He loved his wife, his work, and the quiet evenings they spent together in their suburban home, a sanctuary he had designed himself. Sarah was the vibrant color to his monochrome blueprints. A senior publicist at a downtown firm, she was effervescent, ambitious, and moved through the world with an easy confidence that had captivated him from their first meeting. She could command a room with a story, her laughter echoing long after the punchline. He was the steady hand, she was the brilliant spark. Together, they were a perfect composition, or so he thought. The first hairline crack in the foundation appeared so subtly he almost missed it. It started in the spring, the season of renewal, which felt cruelly ironic in retrospect. Sarah began coming home late. The first few times her excuses were plausible, delivered with an apologetic smile and a kiss that tasted of mint and exhaustion. A last-minute client crisis, she'd say, dropping her briefcase by the door. The launch party ran way over. Mark, ever the trusting husband, would simply nod, reheat her dinner, and listen as she recounted the dramatic, high-stakes world of public relations. But the pattern began to set. Hectic became her new normal. Their shared dinners dwindled from 5 nights a week to 2, then 1. The phone, once a casual accessory left on the kitchen counter, became an extension of her hand. It was always angled away from him, its screen guarded like a state secret. It would lie face down on the night's successful career. He loved her ambition, after all. It was part of what made her shine. The name Alex first entered their home as a casual mention. "Alex thinks we should target the indie blogs first," she said one night, scrolling through her emails while Mark cleared the table. The name was gender-neutral enough, a colleague, nothing more. But Alex's name began to pop up with increasing frequency. Alex had a brilliant idea. Alex saved the presentation. Alex knew this great little wine bar downtown. One Saturday, while they were grocery shopping, Mark saw a text flash on her screen before she could snatch the phone away. It was from Alex, and it ended with a heart emoji. "Who's Alex exactly?" he asked, trying to keep his tone as casual as the cereal boxes he was stacking in their cart. Sarah didn't miss a beat. "Oh, just a guy from work. He's a little flamboyant. Puts hearts on everything," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "You know the type." Mark didn't know the type, but he let it go. He had to, because the alternative was a chasm he wasn't ready to look into. The signs, however, kept accumulating, each one a small tremor threatening the integrity of his world. There was the new, expensive lingerie she bought but never wore for him, the sudden obsession with a CrossFit gym on the other side of town, a 40-minute drive when there was a perfectly good one 5 minutes from their house. "The trainers are just so much better," she'd explained, lacing up brand new sneakers. Alex recommended it. The tension in the house grew, an unspoken thing that filled the spaces between them. Their conversations became functional, logistical exchanges about bills and groceries. The easy laughter that once filled their home was gone, replaced by a strained silence. Mark felt like he was living with a ghost, a beautiful, familiar stranger who looked like his wife, but felt entirely different. He was losing her, and he didn't even know who he was losing her to. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. It was their anniversary. Mark had left work early, stopping at the florist for a bouquet of Sarah's favorite peonies. and at the bakery for the chocolate lava cakes she adored. He planned a quiet, romantic dinner, a desperate attempt to rebuild a bridge back to the woman he had married. Said, kicking off her heels, "It was a nightmare day." "You didn't answer my calls, my text," Mark said, his voice quiet, strained. "It's our anniversary, Sarah." She had the grace to look momentarily guilty. "Oh God, Mark, I'm so sorry. It completely slipped my mind. We had this crisis with the launch, and my phone died, and—" The excuse was a patchwork of lies, and for the first time, he didn't even try to believe it. He could smell the faint, cloying scent of a man's cologne on her coat. As she turned to walk into the kitchen, he saw it, a small, dark purple mark on the side of her neck, just above her collar. A hickey, a mark of ownership from another man. The architect in him saw the blueprint of his life burst into flames. The solid ground he had stood on for 5 years crumbled into dust, revealing the abyss he had been so afraid to face. The silence in the room was deafening. In that moment, he knew his marriage was over. The only question left was how it would end. Sarah continued her practiced monologue of excuses, her voice a smooth current of well-rehearsed fiction. She didn't notice the change in him. She didn't see how the soft, forgiving lines around his eyes had hardened into something brittle. She was a publicist, skilled at spinning narratives, and she was trying to spin one now. But Mark was an architect. He dealt in truth, in the unyielding reality of stress points and load-bearing walls, and he knew, with chilling certainty, that the central pillar of their marriage had just failed. He let her finish, his gaze fixed on that damning mark on her skin. When her voice finally trailed off, the silence she left behind was heavy, suffocating. "What's on your neck?" he asked. His voice was unnervingly calm, devoid of the anger or anguish he might have expected. It was the detached voice of a man assessing structural damage. Her hand flew to her neck, a gesture of pure, unadulterated guilt. Her eyes widened. "What? Oh, this? It's nothing. I burned myself with my curling iron this morning. You know how clumsy I am." The lie was so audacious, so insulting in its simplicity, that a bitter laugh almost escaped him. A curling iron. She was a terrible liar. Her talent was in deflection, not fabrication. "A curling iron," he repeated, the words flat. He took a step closer, and she flinched. He stopped, maintaining the distance between them. "It looks like a hickey, Sarah." "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped, her fear instantly morphing into indignation. It was her go-to defense, the one she used whenever he got too close to a truth she was hiding. "You're seriously accusing me of cheating? On our anniversary? My God, Mark, what is wrong with you? I've been working my ass off, and I come home to this? To these insane, paranoid accusations?" This was the gaslighting he had read about but never experienced. The calculated reversal of blame, designed to make him question his own sanity. But his sanity had never been clearer. The fog of denial had finally lifted, and he was seeing the landscape of his marriage for what it truly was, a facade. "The cologne, Sarah," he said, his voice still quiet. "You smell of another man's cologne." Panic flashed in her through her performance. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone amidst the evidence of her betrayal and the ruins of the evening he had planned. The days that followed were a masterclass in cold warfare. They moved around each other like ghosts in the house he had designed to be a home. The silence was a physical presence, broken only by the mundane necessities of cohabitation. "Did you get the mail? The dishwasher is clean." Mark stopped being a husband and became an observer. He watched her with a detached, analytical eye. He saw the constant, secretive texting, the quick, hushed phone calls she took in the garage, the way she would jump if he entered a room unexpectedly. He was no longer looking for reassurance. He was gathering data. He was an architect drafting the demolition plans for his own life. The love he'd felt had been replaced by a cold, hard resolve. The pain was still there, a deep, foundational ache, but it was now a fuel source, not a debilitating wound. He knew he couldn't live like this. He needed certainty. He needed to see the rot with his own eyes. The opportunity came a week later. Sarah told him she had to go on a last-minute business trip to Chicago for 2 days, a major client presentation. She packed her suitcase with an air of professional duty, but he saw the flicker of excitement in her eyes. "I'll be back Friday night," she said, giving him a perfunctory kiss on the cheek that felt like ice. "Don't miss me too much." "I won't," he said, and he meant it. On Thursday, Mark went to work as usual. He sat in meetings, reviewed blueprints, and answered emails. To any outside observer, it was a normal day, but inside he was executing a plan. At noon, he told his boss he was feeling unwell and needed to go home. He drove not to their house, but to a coffee shop a few blocks away. He sat there for hours, watching the world go by, a cold dread coiling in his stomach. He was giving her time to get comfortable, time to let her guard down. At 4 o'clock, he drove home. The house was quiet as he pulled into the driveway. Her car was gone, as expected, but another car was there, a sleek black Audi he didn't recognize, parked brazenly in front of their house. He walked to the front door, his heart hammering against his ribs. Violation so profound it stole the air from his lungs. They hadn't heard him. They were in their own world, a world built within the walls of his. In that instant, the architect in him died, and something else was born, something colder, harder, and infinitely more resolute. The pain was gone, replaced by an absolute crystalline clarity. He didn't feel rage. He didn't feel sorrow. He felt nothing. Just the quiet, calm certainty of a man who has seen the final, irrefutable truth. He didn't announce his presence. He didn't scream or throw things. He simply turned, walked silently back out the front door, and closed it gently behind him. He sat in his car for a long moment, the jazzy music still a faint, mocking whisper from the house. Then he started the engine, pulled out of the driveway, and began to design his new life. The demolition had just begun. Mark drove without a destination. The familiar streets of his neighborhood felt alien. The houses he'd passed 1,000 times now just empty structures. He was a ghost haunting his own life. He ended up at a nondescript hotel off the highway, a place of transient anonymity. The room was sterile, beige and brown, smelling faintly of industrial cleaner. It was the antithesis of the home he had so carefully designed, the home that was now a crime scene. He didn't sleep. He sat in the stiff armchair, the city lights a distant, blurry constellation, and he planned. An architect doesn't begin demolition with a sledgehammer. He begins with a blueprint. He took out his phone, not to call Sarah, but to search for the top-rated divorce attorney in the city. He read reviews, compared firms, and by dawn, he had made his choice. At 8:01 a.m., he made the first call. "I need to file for divorce," he told the lawyer, his voice steady. "My wife is having an affair. I have irrefutable proof." There was no emotion, just a statement of fact. He scheduled a consultation for the following Monday. He spent Friday in that hotel room, a self-imposed exile. He turned his phone off, severing the last connection to the life that was no longer his. He needed the silence. He needed to let the shock settle into a solid foundation of resolve. The pain was still there, a low-frequency hum beneath the surface, but it was no longer in control. Clarity was. He drove back to the house late Friday night, after he was sure Sarah would have returned from her business trip. He parked down the street and waited. He saw her car in the driveway. The lights in the house were on. He watched the windows for an hour, a silent sentinel observing the final moments of his marriage. When he finally walked through the front door, she was in the living room, curled on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, a bright, false smile on her face. "Hey, you're home. I was just about to call. Chicago was a whirlwind," she began, launching into another one of her fictions. Mark didn't let her finish. He walked to the center of the room and stood there, a quiet, immovable object. "I came home early yesterday, Sarah," he said. The color drained from her face. The smile vanished. Her entire body tensed. "You think?" Alex and I were just friends. He was just here for a minute. He was wearing my shirt, Sarah, Mark repeated, the detail a precise, devastating blow. The denial crumbled, replaced by anger. So what? You're going to throw away 5 years of marriage over one stupid mistake? After everything I've put up with? Your moods? Your obsession with work? You're not perfect either, Mark. He didn't take the bait. He didn't engage in the fight she so desperately wanted, the fight that would muddy the waters and shift the blame. I'll be staying in the guest room until one of us can move out, he said calmly. Since this house is legally mine from before our marriage, I expect that person will be you. The lawyer will be in touch with the details. He turned to walk away, but she grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. The anger was gone, replaced by a desperate, panicked pleading. Tears streamed down her face. Please, Mark, don't do this, she sobbed. I love you. It was a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Please, don't leave me. He looked at her, at the tears he once would have done anything to stop. Now, they were just water. He felt a profound, hollow sadness, not for the loss of their future, but for the lie of their past. You didn't make a mistake, Sarah, he said, gently removing her hand from his arm. You made a choice, over and over again, and now I'm making mine. He walked to the guest room and closed the door, the sound of her sobbing echoing in the house he had built for them. The demolition was underway. Living in the guest room was like living in a stranger's house. The bed was unfamiliar, the walls bare, but it was a fortress. The closed door was a boundary Sarah could not cross, and this small act of separation was the first step in reclaiming his space, both physically and mentally. The weekend passed in a thick, suffocating tension. Sarah cycled through a publicist's full repertoire of crisis management tactics. First came the remorse tour, where she left tearful, handwritten notes under his door, filled with apologies and promises to change. When that failed, she shifted to the nostalgia campaign, cooking his favorite meals and leaving them outside his room, hoping the scent would lure out the man she used to know. When he remained unmoved, she pivoted to the guilt offensive, alternating between angry texts about how he was destroying her life and sad, wounded messages about how empty the house felt. Mark observed it all with the detached air of an architect reviewing a flawed design. He saw the manipulation, the performance. He ate protein bars in his room and ignored the elaborate dinners. He deleted the texts without reading them. The man she was trying to reach no longer existed. He had been a casualty of the demolition. On Monday morning, he met with the lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Helen. She listened to his story without judgment, her expression unchanging as he laid out the facts. It's a clean break, she said when he finished. The house is premarital property. No children. Your finances are relatively separate. The infidelity provides clear grounds. This should be straightforward, provided she doesn't decide to fight. She'll fight, Mark said. Not for the marriage, but for the narrative. She can't stand to lose. Then we prepare for that, Helen said, her voice firm. Your job is to disengage. Do not respond to emotional appeals. All communication should go through me. You are no longer her husband. You are the opposing party in a legal dispute. Act like it. The advice was cold, clinical, and exactly what he needed. It gave him a new blueprint to follow. The official divorce papers were served to Sarah at the house on Wednesday evening. Mark was in his room when he heard the doorbell, followed by a brief, formal exchange. Then, silence. A few moments later, a primal scream of rage and disbelief tore through. The cold, impersonal language of the law had finally broken through her emotional defenses. A quiet, resentful resignation settled over the house. She began packing. Watching her dismantle her life from their shared home was a strange, surreal experience. He saw her boxing up the vibrant, colorful things that had been her signature. The bright throw pillows, the abstract art, the collection of eclectic coffee mugs. The house began to revert to his own minimalist aesthetic, becoming more monochrome, more him. It was a painful but necessary purification. The day she moved out was overcast and gray, the weather a perfect match for the mood. He stayed in his office pretending to work, as she and two movers she'd hired carried box after box out the door. He heard the scrape of furniture, the slam of the truck door, the final quiet click of the front door closing. He waited for an hour before emerging. The house was silent, eerily so. He walked through the rooms, his footsteps echoing in the new emptiness. Her perfume no longer lingered in the air. Her clutter was gone from the bathroom counter. The master bedroom, their bedroom, was half empty, a gaping wound in the center of the house. He stood in the middle of the living room, alone for the first time in 5 years. The feeling wasn't triumph, and it wasn't just sadness. It was a profound, terrifying emptiness. The demolition was complete. He was standing on cleared ground, surrounded by the rubble of his past life. Now, he had to face the daunting task of building something new, all by himself. The first week of solitude was the hardest. The silence he had craved was now a deafening roar. Every empty corner of the house seemed to hold a memory, a ghost of a shared laugh or a quiet moment. He found himself avoiding the master bedroom, sleeping on the sofa because the emptiness of the other side of the bed was a physical ache. He was an architect standing in the skeletal frame of a building, the blueprint for the future a terrifyingly blank page. He knew he couldn't stay in this limbo. A structure, whether a building or a life, needs a solid foundation. His first act of reconstruction was small but significant. He drove to a furniture store and bought a new bed. Not just a mattress, but a whole new frame. Something modern and minimalist that looked nothing like the one they had shared. He spent an afternoon assembling it himself, the simple, logical process of following instructions and fitting pieces together a soothing balm for his fractured mind. That night, sleeping in his own bed, in his own space, felt like laying the first cornerstone. Next, he purged the house. He gathered every last remnant of Sarah, the single earring left in a drawer, the half-empty bottle of shampoo in the shower, the books she'd left on the nightstand. He even took down the photos of them together, the smiling, happy couple who were now strangers. He packed it all into boxes, not with anger, but with a sense of finality. He didn't throw them away. He simply moved them to the attic, archiving a past he no longer lived in. With the space cleared, he began to fill it with himself. He reclaimed his Sundays, which had been consumed by obligatory brunches with her friends. Now, he spent them at the driving range, the satisfying thwack of the golf ball a release for his pent-up frustration. He reconnected with old college friends he had drifted away from, finding comfort in their easy, uncomplicated camaraderie. They didn't ask for details. They just offered a beer and a listening ear, which was more than enough. He poured his energy into his work, finding solace in the clean lines and precise calculations of his job. He took on a challenging new project, a community library, and lost himself in the design, creating a space for quiet contemplation and new beginnings. His creativity, which had felt stifled for so long, flourished in the newfound silence of his life. 6 months after Sarah moved out, he received an email from his lawyer. The divorce was final. Paper on his dining room table, the same table where he had witnessed the ultimate betrayal. But it was just a table now, a piece of wood and steel. He picked up a pencil, and as the evening sun cast long shadows across the room, he began to sketch. It wasn't a building this time. It was a landscape, a path winding up a mountain towards a wide-open horizon. He didn't know exactly where the path was leading, but for the first time in a long time, he was excited to find out. He had lost his marriage, but in the rubble, he had found something far more valuable, a solid, unshakable foundation, built by his own 2 hands. He had found himself.